Jasmine and Kevin, are you guys ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, no problem. Just making sure since I can't see it, but that's fine if you don't want to have your cameras on right now. But
Okay.
so I have another video today. We'll start with just move over that screen. So I chose this one because I think it's interesting and there's a lot of humor in it, which I hope the humor will be understood. So I think it's kind of a fun one to watch. It's another TED Talk about kind of how our attitude affects our work and our life. But he does talk rather quickly. So there are some parts, there's one part of the video where he is talking so fast that the subtitles do not keep up with him. So I'm hoping it's not a problem. If you're having some trouble, you can just quickly say something or even send like a message in the chat on Skype or on Zoom. And just let me know because I have the option to slow down the video, but it makes the audio a little bit weird. So I'm going to try to keep it at normal speed unless it gets to be too difficult. So just let me know and we can slow it down a little bit if it's too much. So go ahead and I'll share screen and get that started. Just full screen. All right, here we go.
When I was 7 years old and my sister was just 5 years old, we were playing on top of a bunk bed. I was 2 years older than my sister at the time. I mean, I'm 2 years older than her now, but at the time that meant she had to do everything that I wanted to do, and I wanted to play war. So we were up on top of our bunk beds, and on one side of the bunk bed, I had put out all my G.I. Joe soldiers and weaponry, and on the other side were all my sister's Milos and ponies and ready for a cavalry charge. There are differing accounts of what actually happened that afternoon, but since my sister is not here with us today, let me tell you the true story. Which is my sister is a little bit on the clumsy side, and somehow, without any help or push from her older brother at all, suddenly Amy disappeared off of the top of the bunk bed and landed with this crash on the floor. And I nervously peered over the side of the bed to see what had befallen my fallen sister, and saw that she had landed painfully on her hands and knees on all fours on the ground. I was nervous because my parents had charged me with making sure that my sister and I played as safely and as quietly as possible. And seeing as how I had accidentally broken Amy's arm just 1 week before, heroically pushing her out of the way of an oncoming imaginary sniper bullet, for which I have yet to be thanked. I was trying as hard as I could. She didn't even see it coming. I was trying as hard as I could to be on my best behavior, and I saw my sister's faces boil of pain and suffering and surprise, threatening to erupt from her mouth and threatening to wake my parents from the long winter's nap for which they had settled. So I did the only thing my little frantic 7-year-old brain could think to do to avert this tragedy. If you have children, you've seen this hundreds of times before. I said, Amy, wait, don't cry, don't cry. Did you see how you landed? No human lands on all fours like that. Amy, I think this means you're a unicorn. Now that was cheating because there's nothing in the world my sister would want more than not to be Amy the hurt 5-year-old little sister, but Amy the special unicorn. Of course, this was an option that was open to her brain at no point in the past. And you could see on my poor, manipulated sister's face conflict, as her little brain attempted to devote resources to feeling the pain and suffering surprise she just experienced, or contemplating her newfound identity as a unicorn. And the latter won out. Instead of crying, instead of ceasing our play, instead of waking my parents with all the negative consequences that would have ensued for me, instead, a smile spread across her face, and she scrambled right back up onto the bunk bed with all the grace of a baby unicorn. With one broken leg. Well, we stumbled across. At this tender age of just 5 and 7, we had no idea at the time was something who was going to be at the vanguard of a scientific revolution occurring 2 decades later in the way that we look at the human brain. What we had stumbled across is something called positive psychology, which is the reason that I'm here today and the reason that I wake up every morning. When I first started talking about this research outside of academia, out with companies and schools, the very first thing they said to never do is to start your talk with a graph. The very first thing I wanted to do is start my talk with a graph. This graph looks boring, but this graph is the reason that I get excited and wake up every morning. And this graph doesn't even mean anything. It's fake data. What we found is if I got this data back studying you here in the room, I would be thrilled because there's very clearly a trend that's going on there, and that means that I can get published, which is all that really matters. The fact that there's one weird red dot that's up above the curve, there's one weird in the room, you know who you are, I saw you earlier. That's no problem. That's no problem, as most of you know, because I can just delete that dot. I can delete that dot because that's clearly a measurement error, and we know that's a measurement error because it's messing up my data. So one of the very first things that we teach people in economics and statistics and business and psychology courses is how, in a statistically valid way, do we eliminate the weirdos? How do we eliminate the outliers? So that we can find the line of best fit, which is fantastic if I'm trying to find out how many Advil the average person should be taking, too. But if I'm interested in potential, if I'm interested in your potential or for happiness or productivity or energy or creativity, what we're doing is we're creating the cult of the average with science. If I ask a question like how fast can a child learn how to read in a classroom, scientists change the answer to how fast does the average child learn how to read in that classroom, and then we tailor the class right towards the average. Now, if you fall below the average on this curve, then psychologists get thrilled, because that means you're either depressed or you have a disorder or hopefully both. We're hoping for both because our business model is if you come into a therapy session with one problem, we want to make sure you leave knowing you have 10. So you'll keep coming back over and over again. We'll go back into your childhood if necessary, but eventually what we want to do is to make you normal again. But normal is merely average. And what I posit and what positive psychology posits is that if we study what is merely average, we will remain merely average. Then instead of deleting those positive outliers, what I intentionally do is come into a population like this one and says why. Why is it that some of you are so high above the curve in terms of your intellectual ability, athletic ability, musical ability, creativity, energy levels, your resiliency in the face of challenge, your sense of humor? Whatever it is, instead of deleting you, what I want to do is maybe we can glean information, not just how to move people up to the average, but how we can move the entire average up at our companies and schools worldwide. The reason this graph is important to me is when I turn on the news, it seems like the majority of the information is not positive. In fact, it's negative. Most of it's about murder, corruption, diseases, and very quickly, my brain starts to think that's the accurate ratio of negative to positive in the world. What that's doing is creating something called the medical school syndrome, which if you know people who have been to medical school during the first year of medical training, as you read through a list of all the symptoms and diseases that could happen, suddenly you realize you have all of them. I have a brother-in-law named Bobo, which is a whole other story. Bobo married Amy the unicorn. Bobo called me on the phone from Yale Medical School. And Bobo said, "Sean, I have leprosy." Which even at Yale is extraordinarily rare. But I had no idea how to console poor Bobo because he had just gotten over an entire week of menopause. See, what we're finding is not necessarily the reality that shapes us, but the lens through which your brain views the world that shapes your reality. And if we can change the lens, not only can we change your happiness, we can change every single educational and business outcome at the same time. When I applied to Harvard, I applied on a dare. I didn't expect to get in, and my family had no money for college. When I got a military scholarship 2 weeks later that allowed me to go, suddenly something that wasn't even a possibility became a reality. When I went there, I assumed everyone else would see it as a privilege as well, that they'd be excited to be there. Even if you're in a classroom full of people smarter than you, you'd be happy just to be in that classroom, which is what I felt. But what I found there is while some people experienced that, when I graduated after my 4 years and then spent the next 8 years living in the dorms with the students, Harvard asked me to. Wasn't that guy. But what happened, I was an officer of Harvard to counsel students through the difficult 4 years, and what I found in my research and my teaching is that these students, no matter how happy they were with their original success of getting into the school, 2 weeks later their brains were focused not on the privilege of being there, nor on their philosophy or their physics. Their brain was focused on the competition, the workload, the hassles, the stresses, the complaints. When I first went in there, I walked into the freshman dining hall, which is where my friends from Waco, Texas, which is where I grew up, I know some of you have heard of it. When they come to visit me, they look around, they say, "This freshman dining hall looks like something out of Hogwarts from the movie Harry Potter," which it does. This is Hogwarts from the movie Harry Potter, and that's Harvard. And when they see this, they say, "Sean, why do you waste your time studying happiness at Harvard? Seriously, what does a Harvard student possibly have to be unhappy about?" Embedded within that question is the key to understanding the science of happiness. Because what that question assumes is that our external world is predictive of our happiness levels. When in reality, if I know everything about your external world, I can only predict 10% of your long-term happiness. 90% of your long-term happiness is predicted not by the external world, but by the way your brain processes the world. And if we change it, if we change our formula for happiness and success, what we can do is change the way that we can then affect reality. What we found is that only 25% of job successes are predicted by IQ. 75% of job successes are predicted by your optimism levels, your social support, and your ability to see stress as a challenge instead of as a threat. I talked to a boarding school up in New England, probably the most prestigious boarding school, and they said, we already know that. So every year, instead of just teaching our students, we also have a wellness week, and we're so excited. Monday night, we have the world's leading expert coming in to speak about adolescent depression. Tuesday night is school violence and bullying. Wednesday night's eating disorders. Thursday night is illicit drug use. And Friday night, we're trying to decide between risky sex or happiness. I said that's most people's Friday nights. Which I'm glad you liked, but they did not like that at all. Silence on the phone. And into the silence, I said, I'd be happy to speak at your school, but just so you know, that's not a wellness week, that's a sickness week. What you've done is you've outlined all the negative things that can happen, but not talked about the positive. The absence of disease is not health. Here's how we get to health. We need to reverse the formula for happiness and success. In the past 3 years, I've traveled to 45 different countries, working with schools and companies in the midst of an economic downturn. And what I found is that most companies and schools follow a formula for success, which is this: if I work harder, I'll be more successful. And if I'm more successful, then I'll be happier. That undergirds most of our parenting styles, our managing styles, the way that we motivate our behavior. And the problem is, it's scientifically broken and backwards for two reasons. First, every time your brain has a success, you just change the goalpost of what success looked like. You got good grades, now you have to get better grades. You got into a good school, now you have to get a better school. You got a good job, now you have to get a better job. You hit your sales target, we're going to change your sales target. And if happiness is on the opposite side of success, your brain never gets there. What we've done is we've pushed happiness over the cognitive horizon as a society. And that's because we think we have to be successful, then we'll be happier. But the real problem is our brains work in the opposite order. If you can raise somebody's level of positivity in the present, then their brain experiences what we now call a happiness advantage, which is your brain at positive performs significantly better than it does at negative, neutral, or stressed. Your intelligence rises, your creativity rises, your energy levels rise. In fact, what we found is that every single business outcome improves. Your brain at positive is 31% more productive than your brain at negative, neutral, or stressed. You're 37% better at sales. Doctors are 19% faster, more accurate at coming up with the correct diagnosis when positive instead of negative, neutral, or stressed, which means we can reverse the formula. If we can find a way of becoming positive in the present, then our brains work even more successfully, as we're able to work harder, faster, and more intelligently. What we need to be able to do is to reverse this formula so we can start to see what our brains are actually capable of. Because dopamine, which floods into your system when you're positive, has two functions. Not only does it make you happier, it turns on all the learning centers in your brain, allowing you to adapt to the world in a different way. We've found that there are ways you can train your brain to be able to become more positive. In just a 2-minute span of time, done for 21 days in a row, we can actually rewire your brain, allowing your brain to actually work more optimistically and more successfully. We've done these things in research now in every single company that I've worked with, getting them to write down 3 new things that they're grateful for 21 days in a row, 3 new things each day. And at the end of that, their brain starts to retain a pattern of scanning the world not for the negative, but for the positive first. Journaling about one positive experience you've had over the past 24 hours allows your brain to relive it. Exercise teaches your brain that your behavior matters. We find that meditation allows your brain to get over the cultural ADHD that we've been creating by trying to do multiple tasks at once, and allows our brains to focus on the task at hand. And finally, random acts of kindness or conscious acts of kindness. We get people, when they open up their inbox, to write one positive email praising or thanking somebody in their social support network. And by doing these activities and by training your brain just like we train our bodies, what we found is we can reverse the formula for happiness and success, and in doing so, not only create ripples of positivity, but create a real revolution. Thank you very much.
All right. Get that here. And Kevin and Jasmine, if you don't mind using your video and audio at this point, just so
Okay.
it's a little bit more like a like a group here.
Sure.
It's difficult enough. Thanks. So he talked very fast, of course. Did you, I mean, did you understand the majority of the talk? Or was it all kind of a blur? Okay, I'll take that to mean hopefully I understood a little bit. Kevin, were you about to say something?
Right?
I mean, for me, I could understand most of it, except for
Okay.
some specialized phrase or specialized vocabulary.
Yeah, there was some medical terminology and a couple
Yeah.
parts psychology and stuff.
Yeah,
So
terminology.
yeah, don't worry too much about that. It was more important to the jokes, I think, and not as much to the message. So. Jasmine, were you about to say something?
Sorry, I just yes, answer a question of my colleague. Sorry.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Mm.
Are you able to use your video so we can have it feel more like a
Yes,
group?
I want to use video, but I didn't wash my hair yesterday.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't
Yes,
think it bothers
this is the
anyone, but
reason.
I'll okay. I don't think anyone
This is the
cares.
main
but-
reason.
Okay, so I have a number of words that I wrote down, and I guess we can start there. But if you have any other words, then we can go through those, just like we've done before. So I should just add in one I didn't catch before, but I think we should use. So the first word I wrote is erupt. Can anyone give a thought or a definition as to what that means? Any guesses?
Sorry, what did you say? Erupt.
Erupt. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I should. Here, I'll go ahead and share my document too, so this will be easier to see the words. Is that up on everyone's screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're just doing this first word here, erupt. So erupt can be used a couple of different ways, but really it means the same thing. So I'll give an example and maybe that will help. So we can say when a volcano is active, it erupts at times. So in the sense of a volcano, right, it's when lava and ash and things are flying out. In terms of using it with a person, erupt would be like an emotional display that suddenly is very forceful and and intense. So let me see what I wrote here. So breaking out dramatically and suddenly is, I guess, what I've written for a general definition. How about tragedy?
Some bad thing.
Yeah, so something bad or sad. So I think I had written an event that causes distress or sadness. I think tragedy, when it's used like in ancient Greek literature, when we have these like comedies and tragedies, like the tragedy is the story that ends with a sad ending, or there's a lot of drama and difficulty and things that the characters endure. So in life, we think about tragedy in terms of like a sad happening or something that is difficult or stressful or you know, very distressful to handle.
Mm,
Does that make sense?
yes.
How about unicorn?
Um, it's an animal, but the animal didn't exist in the real world.
Right.
It's a horse with one horn,
Yes. Okay.
and
Yep.
it's always pink.
So it's a mythical animal like a horse with a horn. It can be used in another context. I don't know if you've heard this term in like the startup world where they talk about a unicorn company. So it can be used also just to describe something that's very, very rare, but very special. So it's sometimes used in business or just in casual conversation if someone is maybe making a joke.
Mm,
Good. What about devote?
I know vote.
Little different, but it's a good guess.
Okay.
Devote.
Any thoughts? So-
Dedicated.
Yeah, to dedicate. So he was talking about devoting resources, and that is often how it would be used. You can devote yourself to another person as well. Like if you get married, you're devoting yourself to your spouse. But yeah, to dedicate yourself or resources to something else. What about stumble?
Uh, Stumble. I think it got two meanings. That the first one is that it described physically he couldn't walk very well,
Mhm.
and there's more like spiritual or emotional side that or more virtual side that you just didn't things didn't go well, something like
Okay.
that.
So maybe face an obstacle. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, those are both correct. So a couple like to put it a little more simply, I think stumble in the physical sense is to like trip or you kind of lose your footing for a moment. Um, in the other sense, right, it's having a challenge or having difficulty kind of finding your way on a path, more metaphorically, right? More in the sense of trying to reach an objective. So you can, um, if you are trying to even meet like a business goal and you are having some challenges along the way, you can say you are stumbling a little bit on the way to reaching that goal. Good, very good. How about Vanguard? It's not an incredibly common word. So I picked this out because I thought, okay, that's a difficult word.
Like precursor.
Good. So that's a good start. Yeah, precursor. Any other thoughts to build on that? So in the way he used it, and I think the way it's often used, it relates to innovation. And it's like a person or usually a group of people who are leading the way. So similar to a precursor, I guess, it is kind of the forefront of something new. So I think he talked about like a vanguard of thought. Maybe I think he was talking about how this was a new way of thinking. So he was part of a small group of people that were putting forth these new ideas. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good. How about thrilled? Or thrill
Excited.
would be, yeah, excited. Good. And posit. Any guesses to what posit might mean?
I guess maybe put something
Did you say
to some
pose?
place.
Okay, to post, is that what you said?
No, put.
You put, okay,
Yeah, put something to some
Okay.
place or maybe.
okay. It's, yeah, you're on the right track. Does anyone else have any thoughts? So this is moving in the right direction to the definition. Excuse me. Any guesses?
Me?
Anyone? Just to go a little further. There's one word I think you could use.
I just checked the words and then I think it may be some assumption.
A little bit different from an assumption, because that would mean, well, a little bit different. An assumption usually implies that you have made a decision without, or a judgment without having any real data to back it up. This is there are two other words I can think of that would be a little bit better to use to define it. One of those words looks very similar to the word posit. So it's very similar to pose, but not like we're a model and we're striking a pose. This would be pose in the sense of suggesting an idea. If you pose an idea, posit is essentially the same thing. It is putting forth an idea. So one other word you could use, it's a little bit different, but in case it helps, like hypothesize, right? If you come up with a theory that you want to test, posit wouldn't necessarily imply that it's going to be tested. So the most accurate definition, I think, is this, to pose or suggest an idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the posit is used as a verb, or it can also be used as a
noun. Definitely verb. Let me just see if there is a noun case of it where okay, so yeah, so there is a case where it would be a noun, where you would refer to that, the idea that you're putting forth as a posit. So you can posit an idea. You can also refer to that idea that you were suggesting as a posit. That's much more rare. I think it's much more often used as a verb, but it could also be a noun.
Okay.
How about glean?
Collect something.
Okay. Good. I'll add, so yeah, collect or maybe attain or obtain something to get something. And there's a little bit of an implication with the word, a connotation, something that is not something, another feeling that goes with it, with some difficulty usually. So if you're gleaning something, usually when you say that, it means taking a little bit of something that's larger and maybe more difficult to comprehend. Oh, did we lose? We lost. Oh, there's Kevin. Okay.
Sorry, I lost. The glean means that you collect something big. Oh.
Yeah, well, yeah. So usually the way you would use glean, I think the most often way it's used is to talk about gaining knowledge.
Knowledge.
And it might be
Okay.
used, it's often like if there were a very long, complicated lecture that you were listening to, someone might ask, did you glean anything from that? And it means, were you able to take any bits from that that make sense from this large collection of kind of complicated knowledge?
Okay.
So you're right, it does kind of mean collect or obtain, but the most often use of the word has to do with usually taking a small amount from a large complicated set of something, data usually. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you're not wrong, Jasmine. It's just the way it's most often used is there's a little bit more to it.
Yes, I know.
Okay. How about embedded?
I know embed, but I don't know how to describe this word. It feels like something in another thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good. So usually, yeah, I mean, that's a simple way to explain it. Is Jenny and Kevin, are you familiar with this word? Because I'll try to better define it. If not, so embedded usually means, well, let me see what I wrote in my, that's pretty close to, okay, so like implanted, fixed deeply in something. In business, or like an example I know of with like software development teams, if you are outsourcing software development, you might embed a developer into the business's team, right? So that means basically you're taking someone and putting them into that team. You're placing them within the other team, and they work as an embedded resource. So it's kind of something that's placed into something else and then kind of sits there and goes on within this other thing. It can be used in a lot of different ways, which is why it's difficult to pinpoint a definition, because you could use this in nature, you could use this in business, you could use this in so many different ways. But basically something that's fixed within something else. That comes originally from outside it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How about, excuse me, prestigious?
It's well known.
I'm sorry.
It's well known.
Well
I'm
known.
having. Okay, well known. Yeah, so let's say it's well known. Is it well known as something good or something bad? Or it doesn't matter?
It's good.
With good
Good
reputation.
reputation. Yeah.
Good reputation, good. So let me see what I wrote. Okay, so yeah, so actually I think that defines it pretty well. What did I say? Having great respect, or not having respect for something, being well respected. I think, yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. So like Harvard is a prestigious university, right? A lot of people have heard of Harvard. It has a very good reputation. That would be an example. And then the last word that I have is frantic.
Mad.
Mad?
Uh-huh.
Mad in what sense? Like angry or crazy, or how do you mean
Crazy.
mad? Yeah.
Maybe both.
Could be both. I think frantic doesn't necessarily imply there's anger involved. It can just be kind of a reaction to stress or something where you're just kind of going crazy and all over the place, and there's no real order to it. It's a little bit chaotic. Good. Does that make sense to everyone else?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
It,
Sorry,
it
go ahead.
can be used to describe some cycle.
Like a process, probably not. I mean, it can describe like an event, but I mean, it can
Instant.
just
Instant. Is
innocent.
that similar to instant?
Are you saying
Inside.
innocent? I'm sorry.
Insane.
Inside. Incense. No, incense would be much more related to anger. Frantic is kind of just, maybe I'm not, can you type the word in the chat, maybe, Jasmine, just so I can see?
INSANE.
S
INSAN.
S A N,
E. Insane.
like that?
Insane. No C. Yes. SAN. Sorry, I will.
Sorry.
Insane.
Insane. Yes.
Insane.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a little bit different. Insane, I think, has insane has more of a, I mean, it can be used in different ways, right? But the basis for the word insane has to do more with psychology. Frantic is not necessarily psychological. It can just mean very chaotic.
Okay.
Lots of maybe stress. I wrote this down while watching the video because I missed it before. I'm just gonna very quickly see what the written definition is. Okay, distraught. So it's saying distraught with fear or anxiety, or it can also
Okay, new words. Distraught.
okay, conducted in a chaotic manner. All right, so distraught is very similar. Do you know the word distressed?
Yes.
Okay, so distraught is almost the same as distressed. It is, you are a little bit unnerved. You are It is a difficult, it's referring to an emotion that is very difficult because maybe you are dealing with a situation that is unpleasant and challenging.
Challenging.
Yeah, I mean, so like if you were dealing with something happening that's difficult for you, right? And unpleasant, it's not a nice feeling. You may feel distraught. So if something really bad happens to you, you may feel distraught.
Oh, okay.
It's really very similar to distressed.
Oh, sorry.
Any other words, either from what I've written down today, if something didn't make perfect sense, or any other words from the video that I maybe did not write?
I have one word.
Okay,
It's
one word.
sniper bullet.
What? Say it one more time.
Sniper.
Ah, sniper bullet. Okay.
Oh, sniper. What's this?
So this is not something you'll hear. So this is more relating to, so he was talking about playing war with his sister where he had,
Yes.
okay, so there were some words that were used that were probably, if you were a child in the 1980s in the United States, it would make more sense. So My Little Ponies, actually here, I'm just gonna one moment share my browser again. I'm gonna show you what these are. Just so you, this is not important. It is just so you understand. One moment. Okay, is this showing on the screen? The browser again?
Yes.
Okay, so these are My Little Ponies. Okay, so there was a cartoon show that they made a lot of dolls with and toys, and these were just like silly creatures. There were little ponies, and yeah. So that was a number of cartoons and stuff. So it was a common toy with young girls, and then a very common toy for boys of the same age in that same time in the 1980s were these GI Joes. GI stands for government issue. This is basically U.S. military. And so these were toys that a lot of boys played with at that time. And so it was like these, yeah, military characters. So what he was talking about was just playing with his sister where they were going to have a fake battle and he was going to use the GI Joes and she was going to use the My Little Ponies. The reference though to Sniper Bullet actually came in when he was talking about how he broke his sister's arm the week before. So that was a lot of the humor in this whole situation, is because basically his parents had left them alone to play and had asked them to be very careful because he was saying just the previous week he broke his sister's arm when they were also playing. And he said there was an imaginary sniper bullet. So basically a sniper, oops. Bullet, the word bullet, is that familiar? Right, a piece of ammunition like from a gun. So there's two words here. So sniper is I'm trying to think of how best to type this out. Sniper would be, well, it's a type of soldier, like a military person whose job is basically sitting and hiding and shooting at people from a long distance. So this is somebody with a gun that would be maybe hiding in the bushes from a long distance away and have a very high-powered rifle that would shoot at people from hiding.
Okay.
And then bullet is just the ammunition for the gun. So what he,
Ammunition.
ammunition. So
Yes. Another
is
new
that
word.
okay? Ammunition would be something you use with a weapon. But more specifically, usually like a gun or something that fires something else. I'm going to check the official definition on this because it gets a little bit, there's different ways it can be used. So that's part of the, and I'm trying to think. Yeah, so they just say it's bullets. Which doesn't help us define bullet any better. Let's see. Bullet would be, okay, so this is probably better. So it's a metal projectile, which also is probably another word. So projectile would be something that is sent with force, through the air. So something you throw can be a projectile. Anything that kind of flies through the air. A bullet is a small piece of metal, usually used with a gun. That is, so it is meant to hurt someone in general. Ammunition can be used in different contexts, but it also generally means something that is being used as a weapon. Yeah. It gets complicated because there's a lot of words in here to define one
Yes.
company up another. Yeah.
Mm.
Does that help at all? I mean, I can show here. Let me share my web browser one more time because there are pictures, and that might help make this simpler. So this is a bullet, and it's used. I guess maybe this is in the United States. Guns are very common, so it is, which I do not think is a good thing, but I guess people become a little bit more familiar with some of these terms. So a bullet is just what you use with a gun, which is the thing that is actually shot out of the gun.
Yeah.
And a bullet is a type of ammunition. So ammunition could be really anything that gets, like a supply of bullets or shells. So it's used in a more general sense. I won't even get into the other definition of ammunition. I think it'll get too confusing. And then projectile, I think I defined okay, but something that flies through the air, basically. Well, so here it says something designed to be fired from the gun or relating to a projectile. I don't think these are great definitions. It's, yeah, propelled with great force, something that's flying through the air. I hope that does that help at least in terms of understanding.
It's help.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead. It's a little bit more clear. So when he was talking about the imaginary sniper bullet, he was basically saying they were playing and he was pretending they were coming under attack. And so he pushed his sister out of the way of this imaginary bullet, and she hit the ground so hard that she broke her arm. So now they're supposed to be playing nicely again, and she falls up. So a bunk bed, you have it's two beds on top of each other. Do you know what a bunk bed is?
Yeah.
Okay. So she fell off the very top part, and now she's again hurt herself after just having broken her arm. So that's where a lot of the humor was coming from, is every time he would play with his sister, she would get very badly hurt, even though they were supposed to be safe and quiet. Does that help? I hope that makes a little bit more sense now in terms of what was going on there. Does that make sense now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So we're actually down to only about 7 minutes left. So maybe we'll just start with this first question. Well, I guess these are we can almost do this together. And there's only 3 today, so if you can, or maybe choose one, but if you can think of a time from your life, whether at work or doing anything else, where you feel like your emotions or attitude towards something maybe was either very good or very bad, and it had an effect on this part of your life because of your attitude. If you can think of maybe an example, I thought it would be a good exercise to go along with what the speaker Sean was describing.
Oh, I think when I working out, when I do workout, and
Okay.
if I listen to music, I will be more energy. I will have more
Okay.
energy. I don't know if it means that the music made me happy and then I can work out well.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah, sometimes when I didn't like bring my air.
Your,
Is that right? 耳机?
your earphones, headphones, earbuds.
Yes,
There's
yes.
so many different
Then
words
I will be
now.
sad and I even don't do any exercise. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good example. Thanks, Jasmine. Kevin or Jen, you can take a moment if you need, but have you thought of anything?
You two guys are too silent.
Okay.
I feel like I was always talking and talking. Why you two are so shy?
I'm a shy guy, man.
Excuse me? It's the first day I know you.
It's kind of awkward now.
No, don't worry.
Okay. I can share one. I don't have any particular example.
Okay.
But because I do trading, and if it went well, and I would feel like optimistic and very positive.
Okay.
And therefore I won't feel exhausted in the
Okay.
afternoon. And
Good.
so well, to be frankly, I often fall asleep in the afternoon because the market is too boring, or I just lose money. But if it goes well, and I could stay awake for like
Okay.
till in the evening, something like that.
Sorry, one question. So you fall asleep in the afternoon?
Yeah, kind of, sort of.
Kind of? Seriously, for 4 minutes?
I mean, it's.
or signal?
I mean, technically not fully asleep. I mean, yeah.
Okay, more or less for sleep.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's between awakeness and sleep. Yeah. So but still function well. Yeah.
Do you think that has an effect on your work then? I mean, it sounds like yes, you're more productive if you're having a good day. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. That I think that if you stay optimistic or positive, you would be more concentrated on what you are doing, and result would be better if
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like from experience, yeah,
Great.
it's
Maybe ask Milu to like play some music to wake you up
okay.
during the
Okay,
afternoon.
okay, that yeah, okay. That's a good idea. Okay.
Yeah, say thank you to me.
Thanks.
Jen, did you think of an example you could use?
Sure. For unhappiness, I think I also trade my own account. Yeah, and I had one experience. I lose around 2 million CYN within just 3 months. Yeah, for
Okay.
my own account. Yeah, so you may feel really unhappy. But most of the time, I just feel happy because I don't know. Maybe I'm more like a child, so I feel happy to everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you see a difference in how you work or how you behave when you're feeling unhappy or happy? Is there a difference that you notice?
Oh yeah. I think when I feel unhappy, I will try to solve it once and once. But if I fail too many times, I will give up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then
But
maybe,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah. But for happiness, I just feel happiness too everything. Yeah, and I can even have some fun within small things. Like while I'm working, I will just feel happy if I close something down.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
All right. So I guess we're out of time for today. Any other questions or comments or thoughts or anything before we wrap it up?
I like that TED talk we played
Okay.
today. Yes, I really like
Good.
this.
Yeah, I thought this one was a fun one. Some of them, I try to find interesting ones. This one I think is a lot funnier. There was a lot more humor than many of them, but I will continue to try to find things that are not boring. All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good. Thanks everyone for being here today, and I will talk to you again on Thursday.
Okay, see you.
See
All
you.
right.
Bye.
Take care. Have a good
Okay,
day.
thanks.
You
You